So welcome back to the show. I have been, and I have a question. I have a question for our listeners. 773-763-9278 is our number. 773-763-9278. I have a question.
Fire.
Indeed, I have a question for Johnny Million. I have a question for the people in the chat room, and I guess the question is Rudy Giuliani, how do I put this? Crook or moron? And here's the reason. Okay, because do you think Rudy Giuliani would be able to notice the difference if somebody was selling him something? Notice the difference between a deep fake and a real photograph. Like most of us right now, deep fakes are pretty good right now, right? Photoshop's pretty good, right? But there's the uncanny valley where a lot of us are like, something's funky about that picture. We might online, if it goes through our feed, we might go through and go, oh my God, is that Tom Cruise on a golf course? And then you watch it a second time, you're like, something's funky. And that doesn't cost us anything. Everybody's saying both in the chat room. Banjo Battle says crookadoodle-doo. I think there's something, there's
Nice.
merit to that. They're both customers of Epstein, says Rooks Hoover. And Morin, I think he actually believes it. The man has tried to use his Apple Pen backwards. That's true. Well, that goes to the whole technology thing, because you have, this idea that they're talking about how Biden is on par to be our most tech-savvy president so far. I mean, that's kind of amazing that at his age, and
that's pretty crazy.
I've done. Many people know the joke of I've done in my act. If you've seen my act, and if you haven't, I'm not going to restate the joke. But it's basically about buying my grandmother a cell phone, a smartphone, and how the guy at the store didn't want to sell it to us because she's too old to deal with it. And my case, that the opposite is true, that old people have been around and they've been through more iterations of technology than you have. If you were born right now, you couldn't go back and operate a rotary phone. They can do both. So in the case of Joe Biden has a phone. Trump lives on his phone, and they're basically the same age, couple of years difference, right? Same generation. But Trump lives on his phone. I mean, he doesn't understand that they can be hacked, and that's where he's dumb, and the same thing is true of Rudy Giuliani. But Rudy Giuliani on his show, Rudy Giuliani is 51 years old and with greasy hair. He often will have two iPads sitting in front of him on his desk. And he will use them, and as one person in our chat room noted, he will oftentimes use his Apple Pen backwards. But that's partly because in his time, he's used pens and written, which a lot of kids don't do anymore. They just type stuff. And over time, as an older man, he got, we all used just the rubber-tipped styluses for a good long while. It didn't matter the end. And you had a fine end and a round end for some things just to direct it, using it like a little wand, right?
Mm-hmm.
So over the over the course of watching Rudy Giuliani sort of, figure that part of it out, and yet at the same time, a little learning is a dangerous thing, being ridiculously dumb about everything else, incriminating himself. So this guy, Perry, who was looking after the Levin Igor, and who was really concerned that these guys, and I understand, these guys are crooks, they are luckily bad at their job, but what they are moving to do, like the statement by the guy, and his name, that was looking into Dale Perry, who was looking into Levin Igor's businesses in Ukraine. Understand that he was saying what was so troubling was it was basically the presentation of the intent to take the gas sector back to where it was during the Yanukovych regime. Okay, that is, understand this, back to where it was during the Yanukovych regime. That was before Hunter Biden joined Burisma. So understand this, and understand what was going on in the Ukrainian energy sector at that time. Russian sock puppets were trying to undermine the energy sector there, were being paid by Russia to do it so that Russia wouldn't have to compete with Ukraine for getting oil and gas to Europe, so that the big pipeline that Russia's trying to push down, that we're arguing about Russia with, right, that everybody's talking about, that Ukraine couldn't compete with that, and Europe could go, let's see, we can either get our natural gas from Russia, who, you know, is run by a maniacal mobster who's pushing, you know, having people push doctors out of windows when they say the truth about COVID and the Sputnik vaccine, and is trying to kill Navalny and is murdering, you know, dissidents in parks in Germany. We can choose between buying our oil and gas from them or from the Ukraine, which is a free ally of Europe. Well, how do you stop them from making that choice? You undermine the oil and gas sector in Ukraine. You bury it. You make it unprofitable. You make it inept. You destroy sections of it. You make it so that no one would invest money in it, because it will. Why would you invest in a pipeline in Ukraine that gets, you know, the oil and gas from there into Europe if you know full well that the money you invest is going to go into Russian coffers? It's going to be siphoned out. And not only is it going to go to Russia, just straight up cash out the door, the $1 million you put in is going to be $950,000 in the pocket of Vladimir Putin and his friends, and that people are going to get murdered along the way, but that the money that is given to Russia is going to pay for the bullets that are being fired back into Ukraine to actually help finance the takeover of Ukraine. After Crimea, that was the fear. Yeah. That was what Yanukovych and his crowd, that's what that prosecutor that everybody's saying Biden he bragged about getting right. Yeah, he bragged about it. The guy was a crook. He was working on behalf of the Russians. He was undermining the Ukrainian government so they could not be free. And a democracy where they could have free and fair elections, and you don't have snipers on rooftops, right? So over the course of that, in making that decision, this guy recognized that, oh my God, these guys are trying to undermine the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian gas sector so that they can go back to that system where the Russians could slowly but surely chip away at the Ukrainians' belief that they could have a functioning government and a society of their own, so that they would basically beg to go back into the arms of Russia so that they wouldn't be run by this corrupt nonsense, or that it was at least a level of corruption they were used to. That's the hope, right? And when Hunter Biden and his investment buddies came in, they were bringing in money from all over the world into the Ukrainian oil and gas sector. And their job, and why they got such a big fee, was to sit there with their arms crossed on the board and make sure that that money got spent on pipelines and pumps and drilling and not funneled into Russia, which ticked off Russia and made them an enemy of this. So they immediately went, okay, Hunter Biden, his dad's probably going to run. He's the former vice president. Even if he doesn't run, we can go, this is just this is a situation where people are influence peddling. That's what we do, so we'll just tar them with that. So that's precisely what happened. They started this plot a while back because they want to go back to that system. And Hunter Biden and his buddies were sitting there making $85,000 a month amongst the three of them, watching $1.5 billion get invested in the Ukrainian oil and gas sector because the investors were expecting over time a $20 or $50 billion return once that was done. So if you're making $85,000 a month, shepherding $1.5 billion through that everybody's trying to steal, and you're in charge of it, and you're on the hook if it gets stolen, by the way. Yeah. You're never going to work again, and a lot of these people are dangerous. These investors are, you have car accidents when you mess with $1.5 billion of some of these people's money, because it was Saudi princes and all kinds of people who were wanting to invest in this because they're running out of oil and gas. That's another story. That they wanted to go back to this. And unfortunately for them, Hunter Biden and his buddies were in the way. And so this scheme was hatched, to stop it. And Donald Trump would be the delivery system for it, and Rudy Giuliani would help them craft this. And as soon as Hunter Biden left that board, the original owner of the company, who'd been living in exile during that time, came back to the country.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be back right after the news and a couple of, yeah, we got to do that stuff. Thanks for listening. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. We'll be back right after this.